Hi everyone, so today's video is going to be just a pretty chill, chatty video. I'm really only making this video to test out the lighting. Do I look like a white guy who makes YouTube videos on filmmaking and photography yet? Today's video is going to be a really quick Q&A because I actually asked you guys to ask me some questions a few months ago, but then I had a breakdown and I wasn't using social media for like an entire month or whatever, and so I just never got around to filming it. I love all of you who are still here despite the fact that I always ask you to ask me questions because I am incapable of coming up with ideas on my own. I'm just going to be picking and choosing from a few of the questions I got. The first one is, I would love to hear your opinion on thinking your writing is genuinely bad versus being insecure. This is a really good question because this is something that I've talked about on my channel before in a writing vlog. I was talking about like my disillusionment with my writing, and I really didn't understand that what I was writing could be interpreted as good. I've been writing for so many years to the point where I can understand kind of objectively how bad or how good my writing is. At least I thought so, but then the summer rolled around and I literally could not tell when I was writing Feeding Habits. I genuinely thought that everything I wrote was bad, and it wasn't even me like self-deprecating, it just felt like a fact. I was talking to my sister in the summer and I was like, it's not insecurity because I know that like I'm good at writing in other avenues, and she kind of stopped me and she's like, well, it still sounds like insecurities. It was good for her to tell me that because it helped me reflect. And a few months later, obviously, it's been a while since last summer. It feels like it's only been 2 months, but it's almost been a year since then. I did realize that I am still incredibly insecure about my writing. It could be because of a rooted insecurity. At least I think that's where I came from. I had to think about it, and with Feeding Habits, I had felt a lot of pressure with that book because I wanted it to be better than Mothwork. So Mothwork is a novel that I started in early 2019, so almost, don't tell me this was 2 years ago. This is my face realizing this was 2 years ago. It was a project that was meant to be kind of my equivalent to like fan fiction. It was just supposed to be fan service for myself. I was the fan. At the time, my two characters, Lonan and Harrison, they were not in a relationship, but for years I had been shipping them. And so what brought me a lot of joy back in 2019, I was in grade 12, was writing like super shippy fan fiction. It was in those moments where I just completely like let go. I didn't stress so much about the writing, and it made me feel like I was having a lot of fun. When it came time to write the sequel of Mothwork, I was also in a situation where I wanted the book to be fun, but I also wanted the writing to be good. I had just gotten home from my first year at my writing degree. I had finished Mothwork and was having a lot of like imposter syndrome after the fact of finishing Mothwork. Not to go on a side tangent, but to go on a side tangent. Usually when I finish a book, I'm on a high. I absolutely love the book. I'm feeling so nostalgic. But then a few weeks later, I just start to overthink it. It happens with every single one of my projects. Even like I think my friends could probably say, Rachel, didn't you just say you like loved that book? But now it's like 4 weeks later and you just like hate it. Happens to me every single time I write a project. I felt a type of way about writing Feeding Habits. And so because of that, I didn't set myself up for success. Every single time I would write it, I would feel like my writing is just bad. There is no way this could be good because I'm writing it. How could it be good? But it wasn't me knowing that I had merit in my work like I do in other avenues like short fiction, for example. I know that my short stories are good. I know that the writing in my short stories is very good. And if it's not, I probably won't finish the short story. But with Feeding Habits, I couldn't tell. And I just thought every single time, this has to be garbage. There's no way this can't not be garbage. And so I totally understand where these genuine thoughts of thinking your work is bad comes from. I think 9 times out of 10, it is coming from a place of insecurity about what other people think. And I made a video just really recently about writing for yourself. And I think we get so, as writers, caught up in ourselves as audience members as well as the writer that we cannot let go of the fact that we are judging ourselves because we are acting as an audience member as well as the writer. And I think You know how people say turn off your inner editor? I think we need to turn off our inner audience member and really turn on our inner fan. So you know how you're gonna have like huge stans of your work, people who just love your work no matter what? I think in a lot of cases, it's great to also be that for yourself. Instead of being like an audience member who could be critical, I find that as somebody who does struggle with like crippling insecurity and like imposter syndrome, despite the fact that I know I'm a good writer, I know it's really strange. I think being a fan can be really helpful. I want to end off this answer with a quote from a writer whose book I've been reading. It's from Natalie Goldberg. I think it's from the 90s. My psychologist recommended this book for me. It's Wild Mind Living the Writer's Life, and there's a quote in it. "We have to build slowly. This is kind consideration. We acknowledge who we are in the present moment and what we need in order to continue." That was the first quote. I think that is so critical because when I was writing Feeding Habits last year, if I could just go back and tell myself, Rachel, what you need right now is not to be such an asshole to yourself and to actually just forget about what anybody thinks about this, including yourself. That's what I would have told myself. That's what I needed in the moment. I was not being kind to myself. I was not being considerate of myself back then. I wasn't acknowledging where I was in that present moment. In that present moment last year, I needed a project that would make me feel better, and I wasn't giving myself that because I felt not that I didn't deserve it, but that I could do better, but in that moment I couldn't. That was my best and it was okay. It doesn't matter what your best is as long as it's your best. And you don't always have to do your best at all times, whatever that even means. The next quote from Natalie is, "Over and over we begin. This is good. This is kindness. We don't forget our roots." I love that quote. I think I've read it on here before, but I love it so much because it is acknowledging that as writers, we are not linear people. We continue over and over and over again. We begin again. We are literally seeds who keep resprouting. I don't care what anybody tells me. I will never stop being a beginner because we're a beginner every single day we do something. I'm a beginner in something about writing every day. I'm a beginner in writing this scene. Everybody is a beginner. We start over every day. And I think keeping that in mind has really helped me not get in over my head about why am I just not a better writer right now? Why am I just sucking? Well, because you're not the same writer every day. We begin every single day, and that's what growth is, because not every day is a plant gonna look the exact same. It's gonna shift, it's gonna turn, and no matter what, it's beautiful. So just chillax. The next question is really interesting because this is something that I've really been thinking about lately. What are your thoughts on finishing projects? By that, I mean, do you think unfinished works are useless and we should finish one to get some value from it, or not necessarily? I think, no matter what, bottom line, unfinished works are so valuable. Unfinished works are never a waste of time. And I say this because writing is a thing that builds. So like I said before, it is not linear. So I don't mean that one day you write this and then one day you write this and you're here. One day you write this and you're here. It is not an upward slope, but it is a constant building. Sometimes pieces of that Lego building, for example, will come off. You'll forget how to do things. You're out of practice. You're rusty. But the whole point about being a writer is that you have the ability to click back again. So think of like a Lego structure, like I'm saying. If it's a tower, you can take pieces off, but you can also keep building them up forever. And that's how I view writing. It is not a linear experience. Unfinished work can add to those layers. So whenever I don't finish a piece, I don't beat myself up about it. If I don't finish it, it is still valuable because it taught me something. It taught me that I was writing that piece at that time. You might not even take lofty lessons away from not finishing a project, but the great thing about writing is that the more you do it, the better you get. It doesn't mean the better work you're producing all the time. Like I said, it's not linear. But as we continue to write as people, we're going to develop. And just as human beings aren't perfect all the time, writers are not always. I don't think that you need to finish a work to get value in it. Actually, a good story about this is, you guys know, I've mentioned it on here a few times. My favorite book that I've ever written is Fostered Book 3, which is called Resisted, I think. There are a lot of chapters in that book that aren't finished. In fact, my favorite scene in that book is not finished. It has a little thing at the bottom that says, "Come back to this later," and I never came back to it later. There is this part of me that feels kind of special that the scene never ended, so it could literally in a different universe go many different ways, and there are so many possibilities that could spring up, so many alternate universes. And so I think you can still love things that aren't finished. We love things that aren't finished all the time. I've mentioned this before on here, like as a metaphor before, but I'm a guitarist and I learn a lot of half-finished songs. Rarely do I finish a song 100%? If not, it will take me years to finish a song 100%. With me, when I play guitar, I like to graze my way through the process. I like to really master a few chunks at a time, and it'll take a long time to finish the song. And sometimes I don't finish it. Sometimes I will only ever know how to play the chorus, or I will only ever know how to play a riff, and that's okay, but I still play them all the time because they're fun. And I think writers should take that philosophy too, because I don't think it's a problem when it comes to me practicing music, and I shouldn't think it's a problem either when it comes to me practicing writing. All writing helps you as a writer, no matter where it goes. You guys know I'm very anti-capitalist. When it comes to art, I don't believe that it's tied to a money value, which is why I don't rush to publish my books right now. I have a whole video on the writing community's obsession with like money. I have a video on that and why money does not equal like value. I mean, it can, but it does not mean you have to have a money, like a dollar value tied to it. And I think that might also be where the shame and the taboo with unfinished works come from, because unfinished works can't be published, I guess, in this publishing world. And therefore they can't make money. And the only projects that are valuable are ones that are published and make money in the world. That's how I think the industry kind of runs. I think that's how a lot of industries run. But when it comes to art, I think it's a lot more abstract than that. I would never say that unfinished works are not valuable, because I think they are. And this is going to be the last question in this video. How can one find a balance between writing for passion and writing for commercial purposes? Like I said, I have a video on why you don't necessarily need to write for money, but what if we want more of a balance? So what if we don't want to go on like both sides? We want to meet somewhere in the clean middle. I think having a balance of a personal project and a more commercial project can be helpful for this. So back when I was writing to publish, I was drafting a book called I'm Disappointed. I was 14 years old. I'd worked really hard for publication on that book, but I still found it was really helpful to have a personal project on the side. And so I remember I wrote a blog post about like why writing multiple projects is like really helpful. If it's any good, I will link it. If it's not good, I won't link it. But I remember multiple times, because I was blogging at that time, I did write a lot about why having a second project was helpful in reducing the pressure on me. I could just take a breather. It's like being in front of other people versus being by yourself. And so when I was writing I'm Disappointed, I was also writing, I think, book 4. Must have been the end of book 3, book 4 of Fostered. And I found it was really helpful to just jump into a project I was familiar with, a project where the characters made me feel good, where I felt comfortable. But I also understand that not everybody can write 2 projects at once. If you are just writing one project and it is a project for publication, I think it could be interesting to maybe even write scenes from that book that won't appear in the book. It might take the pressure off of producing something that will be in the final book, but you'll still be in the same voice and in the same vein. I think that's a really good way to do it. You can also balance your need for both personal and commercial writing in a different avenue, such as publishing a different form of writing. For example, I have a lot of personal writing when it comes to my novel length work, whereas I always am publishing my short fiction and my poems. I think that having an ideology where you know that you don't have to publish everything you write is really the first step in this balance. So it could just be starting with accepting that it's okay to write for yourself and you don't have to feel pressure to publish unless you want to. And if you want to, go for it. Like, it's totally okay. I think writing can coexist as something that makes money and something that you do for yourself. I don't think that you have to do one or the other in order to be valuable. I personally am really enjoying my time where both coexist. I think once we start loving our work, no matter whether we publish it or not, that's how the balance really comes to be. Because when I look at Feeding Habits, I don't think, oh, that sucks. Like, I hate that project. I think, oh, that's a project that I love very much. Just as when I look at The Species is Dead, which is a short story I got published, I'm like, I love that too. They just both have intrinsic value because I have started to practice a little bit more actively loving my work no matter where it goes in the universe. So that's going to be today's video. I hope you enjoyed this chatty video. So thank you guys again for watching, and I will see you in another video. Bye.